Hello, everyone. In honor of the newest edition of Scott Cawthon's magnum opus, we are going to be reviewing it today. Five Nights at Freddy's. You know the drill. We do have a guest star, the Austinator, with us today. But outside of that, same roll downs, same everything else. So let's just jump right into it. So, Five Nights at Freddy's. Almost a decade in the making, and this is what we get. I'd still like to believe we are in, for the most part, a golden age of video game adaptations. Movies and shows like Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, Detective Pikachu, The Last of Us, and the Super Mario Brothers movie. Great stuff. Sure, we still get stuff like Mortal Kombat and Uncharted, but for the most part, I still think we get some good stuff. This can maybe be added to both lists, if that makes sense. Let's just see how Scott Cawthon's beloved franchise fares on the silver screen. First off, the acting from everyone is pretty good. Josh Hutcherson has proven that he is a talented actor, whether that be for more dramatic roles or for comedy. Here he is good. He's a little awkward at times, but I think for the most part he does a good job with what he's given. Matthew Lillard is always great no matter what he's in, and is always a pleasure. And it is always a pleasure to see him no matter what he's in. Elizabeth Lail as Vanessa, Piper Rubio as Abby, and Mary Stuart Masterson as Jane are all good in their respective roles. Lail is a bit wooden at times. Rubio is good for a kid, which is always a compliment from me since most child actors are terrible. And Masterson plays a good cunt. Unlikable from the get-go, and it worked. Everyone else with their smaller roles were fine as well. Also, Matt Pat is in this because of course he is, as well as Corey X. Kenshin, who I do not know. They play the waiter and the cabbie respectively. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, Markiplier could not be in the film. The effects were absolutely amazing. The animatronics were actually real and not CGI. Thank fucking God. They all looked and sounded fucking perfect and were genuinely pretty creepy at points. Not a ton of gore or anything outside of that in terms of effects, but from what little there was, it looked good. Cinematography and lighting were pretty good. I liked the dream sequences because there was sort of this, for lack of a better word, dreamlike quality to it. Like with what you're watching isn't exactly real, but you can't put your finger on it like an actual dream. Atmosphere was good in the first half, but lost me by the second half. Not as many jump scares as I thought there would be. Still a fair amount, but not nearly as much as I thought it would be, since this series is the king of fucking jump scares. The story was fucking weird. It had an identity crisis. It didn't know if it wanted to be a genuine and scary adaptation of the source material, a drama about a guy losing his sister to his batshit insane aunt while dealing with unchecked guilt from his past, or if it's a comedy about a girl finding friends with ghost-possessed animatronics. All the complaints people have had are present here. It barely feels like an adaptation of the games. There is so much backstory put onto this main character that you wonder why this had to be an adaptation to begin with. I understand taking liberties with a game series whose game mechanics are so little and there is not a lot to them, but this was still a weird direction to go. It's paced oddly, some of it was kind of a bore in all honesty, and the twist involving who is behind everything is extremely fucking obvious, especially when it was announced when the cast of this movie was announced. So there's that too. Overall, it's not a horrible movie by any means, just a weird jumbled mess of trying to adapt what they could but trying to do its own thing, and it comes off as very confused. It's not the worst thing ever, but I would say wait till streaming if you are curious. But if you're a fan expecting a proper adaptation, maybe wait for the inevitable sequel. With this, I give it a 6 out of 10. Devin?
All right, I am just to preface this. I am not an expert on Five Nights at Freddy's, nor am I a fan of the games. In fact, I've only played a bit of the first one. I only got up to the second night because fucking Bonnie kept killing me. It was always him. I haven't played any of the other games. I don't know anything. I don't know much about the lore. So when Blumhouse announced finally they were making a movie based off the beloved franchise after years in development hell, I honestly could care less. I was going to judge the movie. I was going into the movie just to judge it as a movie and not as an adaptation. I saw it with my sister-in-law, who is a fan of the games and knows the lore. After seeing it, what did I think? Painfully mediocre. Biggest positive I can say for the movie is the animatronic and the puppet work by Jim Henson Studios. I'm glad Freddy and the others were in CGI. They looked great with the movements and expressions. Acting was decent. I'd say the best performances were Josh Hutcherson and Mike as Mike, and for what little he's in, Matthew Lillard as Will Afton. It's always great to see Matthew Lillard because he really is, because he does have a really funny and amusing presence to him, and it worked. Again, I wish he was in the movie more. There are plenty of funny moments, especially with the cupcake. I thought the cupcake was hilarious. The movie was shot well, score is decent. But when it comes to my negatives, this suffers from the same problem as Cocaine Bear. Too much focus on uninteresting humans and not enough monster. The characters in this are not very interesting at all. They're dull and flat. As a result, and with Mike, there's just so much focus on his backstory that, as a result, the story of the movie is just all over the place, and the tone is inconsistent. What is this movie? Because it's like they're trying to do a faithful representation of the games, and then to pad out the runtime, since you can do very little about a movie about someone being stalked by Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. It's because we have a story about a brother trying to get custody of his younger sister before his Karen of an aunt does, and then while also trying to figure out the mystery of his missing brother, who he feels a lot of guilt because we got to do the guilt and the trauma monsters because we see those all the time. And then we have this girl befriending ghost children possessing animatronics, like John said. Like, they decide, and that shows the jumble it all into this movie. Like, what is going on? And like I said earlier, I get there's not a lot you can do about a movie about a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic stalking somebody, but you can at least have the subplots be a lot more interesting. I don't know if this was the creator of the game's input or the two other writers, because the guy who made the games wrote the script for this. He was one of the writers. The tone is very inconsistent. There's a lot of moments of inappropriately placed humor and parts that were just confusing and just came out of nowhere, like the friendship montage where the little girl, his Mike, and the cop character, who I'll get into later, are building a fort. Like, my sister-in-law and I, we looked at each other like, what? Like, what is happening? And why are we making the animatronics anti-heroes? And go back. The characters aren't very interesting. The aunt is just a Karen. And there's Vanessa, and I don't get the point of this character at all. Like, she just seems so like railroaded in. Because she would show up, say, "Hi, this place is weird. Have fun." And then she'll come back, "You got to stay out of this. I warned you. Hey, come check this out." Like, bro, if you know this place has a shady history, why don't you just fucking warn him right out the bat instead of encouraging him to continue his job? How about tell him, "Hey, get the fuck out of here"? Also, it doesn't help that her actress, she may be hot, but she cannot act to save her life. The Karen aunt is very annoying, and she's just there, and she's disregarded. The pacing drags a lot in spots. There were moments where I found pretty boring. And also, there's so many plot holes in this movie. The whole subplot with Mike trying to get custody of his sister goes nowhere. Because after the aunt is killed, they don't mention her ever again. If you're just gonna kill her right then and there, why didn't you just why didn't no one say, "Oh my god, she's dead"? What the fuck? Honestly, the more I think about this movie, the more I don't like it. I was very unimpressed. As someone who's not a fan of the games, I was very, very unimpressed. I don't think it's a 26%. I don't think it's the worst horror movie I've seen all year. But in a way, I do agree with some of the critics on this one. This is not a good movie. Sure, yeah, the acting is fine. The animatronics are really cool, and there's some funny moments, but the story's a mess. The pacing is not great, and the tone is inconsistent. Even my sister-in-law, who I stated earlier is a fan of this franchise, she didn't like it either. In fact, she sent me an hour and a half long video explaining the lore, just to kind of refresh me, and said, "Hey, if you're writing a review, listen to this." And she made a post on Instagram saying that the movie was quote buns. If you're a diehard fan of the games, you might love it, but honestly, I'd say just watch this on Peacock. I'd give this a very... Yeah, fair enough. I'd give this a very low 5 out of 10.
Also, Zach, before you start, I did want to mention something. Thank you for the one guy that keeps watching these reviews, movie and cartoon fan. I did forget, he does mention it here. I did forget that this was being simultaneously released on Peacock. So don't wait until streaming, just watch it on streaming or pirate it. I don't care what you do with your life. It's your life.
Yeah. Thank you for always watching our streams. Always appreciated.
Yeah, and I think Zach would appreciate your profile pic. I meant that genuinely, but okay.
No, I get it. I like that show, but I'm more of a casual fan. But
anyway, sorry, yep. Zach.
No, it's all cool. Cool. I like that show. But so it wouldn't be a Cool Kids episode if I were so infamously the most positive one, would it? All right. So this is gonna be, I don't know how long this is gonna go, but I'm gonna try and get my points across to someone who's on the outside of the lore. For context, I know nothing about Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, I know stuff. I know what it is, the security guard stuff. You got to watch the cameras. Sometimes the robots are there, sometimes they aren't. The jump scares, and that there's the lore with William Afton, the dead children. I know I guess you say that's the basic level stuff. So I guess you could say I know enough. But as far as all the lore, getting deep into it, I can't really say I know jack shit. So going into this movie, I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of dreading watching this movie on the lines of me being worried that they were going to treat the movie like you have to know everything in order to understand the movie. And I hate when video game movies do that. Some of the worst video game films I've ever seen are ones that do that. But that being said, I dug the hell out of this movie. It shocks me how much I dug this, given that I know little to nothing about the source material. And I gotta say, I don't know what the critics are smoking on this, honestly. A lot of the people are criticizing it for having too much plot. Too much plot. Like Devin mentioned, there's not, for one, there is not much you can do, so you got to add some stuff. But the way they added things here, I liked how they did it. With the whole thing in the lore about the or I guess dead kids or missing kids, and then connecting all that to the main character's story with his brother having been missing and kidnapped and all that, adding more of an emotional core to it, or at least a more personal connection. To then later when William Afton comes in, I really dug how they kind of put it all together there. And while I admit, yes, there could have been much more screen time with the animatronics when they were on screen, it kind of made me forget that they're not in it as much as fans would want, because especially the one scene when the people are all breaking in and shit, that's like probably the best scene in the movie with the animatronics, especially when the chick gets bit in half. I'm like, are you sure this is PG-13? Because you could have fooled me. If I didn't know this was PG-13, I would have just assumed it was an R. Like, for real. There's some pretty graphic shit in this. And I gotta admit, like, and talk about the crowd I was in for a second, because I went to like an early screening, like a fan event screening for this film with some friends. And that when that happened, when the chick got bit in half, someone in the crowd screamed, "Was that the bite of '87?" So that was pretty funny. And yeah, just talk about the crowd for a sec. Like, the crowd was going ape shit for this. Like, honestly, you would think that it was like a freaking Marvel film or a Star Wars film we were watching, with the way the crowd was just going, "Ugh!" But the biggest instance being at the end when William Afton shows up in the suit. When he, you know, just kudos to freaking Matthew Lillard. When he shows up to work, he shows up to work, and he's like, when he, at least when he's on screen, he's the most interesting part. Not that I wasn't interested in any of the other characters, because I was actually really invested, as I said earlier, in Josh Hutcherson's story arc. And the girl who played his sister, I thought was fantastic. One of the better child actors we have out there, if I got to be honest. So yeah, as someone who didn't know what to expect, not knowing anything about the games mostly, I I dug the hell out of it. It even has me invested in seeing more out of this. It has me a little bit worried about the quality of sequels going forward, because this is the last project that the creator of the franchise is going to be involved with. So it leaves me a bit worried about maybe having outsiders come in, and who knows what they could turn Five Nights at Freddy's into. As far as keeping it faithful to the games, what they could change. You get what I'm saying? It leaves me a bit worried on those fronts. Like, if you're gonna, if he wants to be done with this, fair enough. But yeah, so I'm both intrigued and worried about sequels going forward. So, uh, disjointed review side, I really enjoyed it. If you're a hardcore fan, or if you're just someone looking for something spooky but even a little quirky to watch during Halloween, see this in theaters. You may find more worth in it than you're expecting, and I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10.
This is Zach. He has terrible taste. All right,
Zach
Austin,
has
you go.
terrible taste. Alrighty. So I'll come out and say this. I'm sort of relatively new to the FNAF series. I just started playing the games a few months ago. I played the first three. I could not finish the fourth one because it's way too hard. Sister Location is fun, and I played a little bit of Pizzeria Simulator. So going into this, I was both skeptical and excited for it, because I was skeptical because of who was making it, Bloomhouse. But knowing who was involved with it, I was intrigued. So coming out of this, I didn't go see it in theater. I was very underwhelmed. But despite it being underwhelming, I didn't think it was bad. I think I'm pretty much in the majority of everybody when I say that this movie is just okay. It's not anything to write home about, but it's not like unwatchably bad. Just to start off with my positives, I did like the animatronics designs. They are very accurate to the first game. I thought that the sound design for them was great, and just the overall look of them, they still look very worn, but they're not completely destroyed and dismantled like they are in the later games. I did like the story was pretty much on point with the first game, not completely accurate because they do change a lot of things from the lore, but just the whole story of the security guard at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and having to almost stop the animatronics is pretty much accurate, despite the little extra stuff, which I'll get to in a bit, because let's be honest, the extra stuff kind of sucks. The acting and the performances are very solid. More specifically, I think Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard were great in their respective roles as Mike Schmidt and William Afton, respectively. I still like, despite the fact that it does focus way too much on Mike Schmidt's character, I still found him to be a sort of likable character, and his performance was well done. I do agree, despite the fact that he could have been in it more. Matthew Lillard is just great. He always is, whether it be Shaggy or Ghostface. He is pretty good as Springtrap. Or excuse me, William Afton, but he does become Springtrap. Spoilers for future sequels. The rest of the cast was fine. I believe her name was Elizabeth Glale. She was fine. She was as Vanessa. I didn't think she was particularly bad, but I just really couldn't care for her character because, again, she's like another character from the lore that they screwed up big time. So it's just one of those characters where she was fine, but the child actress, I've already forgot her name. I believe her name is Piper Rubio. I think Rubio was fine too. As a child actor, yeah, she was fine. She wasn't like the worst I've ever seen, but again, she was still relatively likable. And I did appreciate the cameos from Corey Kenshin and Matt Pat, because Matt Pat in particular does most of Scott Cawthon's work for him. So it was nice to see him get at least some respect put on his name. And it would have been nice to see Markiplier, but I, again, understand that his scheduling got in the way of that. Also, the Easter eggs were really cool, like seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's poster from the first game and seeing Balloon Boy a couple times. Even though I hate Balloon Boy, it was pretty funny as a couple like jump scares-ish. As far as the rest of the movie goes, this is where the movie just loses me. This movie does not know what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it wants to be a drama, a horror movie, or a comedy, because there are points where it's way too all over the place. And honestly, the real thing that really hurts this movie is the PG-13 rating. I do understand that most of the fan base of FNAF is for kids, and I do understand that you want to make a PG-13 rating for them, but at the same time, this movie having that PG-13 rating really harms it, because a lot of the violence is toned down and just does not work. And especially with one of the kills where you have the one girl get like half her body like chopped off by Freddy, that also feels really out of place too, because you would see that in a very hardcore horror film. That'd be me saying like, "Hey, little Timmy, let's go see this movie," and then having him be traumatized by half the body being torn off. I don't know. That's just a thought. Also, the whole thing with like the child, that whole like child thing where they were talking about the whole custody situation, that was just dumb and pointless. Like the whole thing gets resolved when she just dies, and then nobody talks about it again. Like literally, the only reference you get is like, "Oh, she's still asleep. She's just sleeping," and I'm like, no, that's just dumb. I was not fond of that. And another thing that just really harms this film is the fact that it's not scary at all. if you are being advertised as a horror film and you're supposed to be a horror film, you have to make an attempt to be scary. This film was not scary whatsoever. It is very it's just bland. Like, I don't know if that's what it came off to. It's just bland. Like, it's not very tense at all because, and I'm even going to bring this up too, the whole movie, if you've seen the trailers, you'll know exactly what's going to happen in this film. It is very predictable. This is Blumhouse's biggest issue when it comes to their advertising, is that they reveal so much that by the time we get to the movie, just too much is shown. So, quite frankly, this movie is predictable, so the tense moments are not very tense at all. But I will say, though, the movie is well shot, the music is good, and the designs are great. And I even didn't mention the designs for the Spring Bonnie suit and even Golden Freddy. Unfortunately, this movie is just underwhelming and ultimately just very predictable, boring at times. Honestly, if you're a fan of the FNAF series, you'll like it. If not, you're not gonna care for it. I mean, I'll kind of give Devin. I'm gonna agree with what Devin said. It's definitely not a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think it's that bad, but it's just, I would wait till just watch on Peacock. But if you want a good video game movie, watch the Super Mario movie. This is fine. I'd give it a 6 out of 10.
And then there was one. I'm more on the side here of my follicularly challenged brothers up here, Devin and John. The film is, fairly mediocre. More of a throwback to the mediocre video game movies of old than the more of a throwback to the mediocre video games of old than the new renaissance in that genre. I really didn't mind the lack of gore because for me, I understood that it's a kid's movie and I knew there was no way they were going to go that route anyway. And honestly, I don't really think that was the issue. I don't really think that was an issue anyway, at least not for me, because I thought the parts of the video game the parts of the movie that dealt with the video game, the actual, horror related parts worked pretty well. I thought they were actually able to get around that pretty well, such as, like you mentioned, the scene where Freddy bites the girl in half, and others, I thought they were pretty clever in getting around that. And the design of the animatronics was superb. The music was decent. The music was fine. They did a pretty good job setting up the atmosphere and everything. But I thought the action was good. Especially the finale. I thought the finale was good. But the problem here is, for me, this movie has been beaten into the ground already. The problem for this movie for me was the fact that was the backstory. The backstory is very weird. It's very convoluted. It's really not necessary. They really should. It did feel like, as my fellow reviewers have said, that they were trying to pad out the runtime here, because it seems that every movie has to be 2 hours now, and there's just not necessary for a movie like this. I think they should have streamlined the backstory, made it a lot simpler, got straight into the action, because it got straight into the action, and try to straight, because I understand that the lore is kind of convoluted, but at the same time, why convolute it even more with a weird backstory? So, but thank you, Jack, for that contribution. But how do you follow up that? Jesus. But I really thought they should have streamlined the story, got straight into it, because one of my problems was it really doesn't get going until like 45 minutes or an hour into it. So, it takes so long to get going that you just kind of, I never really made a connection with, what was the guy's name? Mike so you can hardly remember his name. I mean, because you never really make a connection with him. It's like what John said, Jack saying penis out of nowhere was a scarier jump scare than anything in the movie. That's true. But I mean, but anyway, you just don't care about the guy. You know, he's about to lose his sister, which is kind of weird. He's like 40 years old, has a 10-year-old sister or something. I mean, I had an older sister and brother, but they weren't 30 years older than me. Jesus, I don't know where that came from. But anyway, and I just didn't give a damn. I just didn't care. It's like, Jesus Christ, can we just get on with this shit? But you know, so I mean, but anyway, I mean, yeah, I understand. I mean, I have, Josh Hutcherson may have only been 31, John, but the thing is, he was supposed to have grown up in the 80s. He was supposed to grow up in the 80s when all this was happening. So he would have to be in his 40s. So, yeah.
Sorry, I know we're not supposed to interrupt, but I am going to.
No, you're right. Go ahead. I don't
mind. This looked like, the thing is, this didn't take place in the present day. This looked like it took place in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Because remember, you never see a cell phone, you never see a modern car. You see him only on like pay phones, and the technology is not up to date. So I'm pretty sure this is supposed to take place in like maybe like 2002 at the most, maybe even the mid to late 90s. I
wish they had made that clear then. I wish they had made that
I don't know why they didn't like show that, but like from the clothing style and the technology and the overall vibe, I guess, and even the car he drives, even though he is supposed to be poorer, none of the cars looked like super modern. So it's not like Texas Chainsaw 3D, or they're like, oh, she's like 29, but and even though that with the math that would have been like in the 90s, but it takes place in present day because the guy has a cell phone. They did do a good job with that, but I don't know why they didn't just say that. But anyway,
they should have really just made that clear. That was just kind of weird. But I mean, the whole thing would just kind of the backstory honestly just kind of takes you out of it. I know they were trying to, you know, get you invested in the characters, but I think it really had the opposite effect. And, you know, when it actually does get to the parts like from the game, the action with the animatronics and everything, it's actually pretty decent. It's actually fine, you know. I mean, and honestly, that's the strength of the game. You know what I mean? I would have rated this lower, probably more like, you know, my brother here, Devin. But the only reason I'm giving a decent rating, I'm giving a 6 out of 10. The only reason is because my son Jack, he enjoyed it. So he enjoyed it. So honestly, that's the only gauge of quality that matters for me here. So I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. So, I mean, not great, but I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it's enjoyable enough for your kids. If you have kids who are fans of FNAF, you know, then hey, take them to go see it, or you just watch it on Peacock, you know, which like we did, you know. So, I mean, because it's already on there. So, I mean, might as well.
Yeah, and a few comments that I wanted to bring up from Movie and Cartoon Fan. As a FNAF fan, he was pretty disappointed, or she was pretty disappointed. Also true, Matthew Lillard will forever be the second best Shaggy, next to Casey Kasem, of course. And you were right. I didn't realize it was the Henson Company, but once Devin said that, I looked it up, and yep, it is the Henson Company. So
wow.
And then he corrected me. Thank you for that. Was on Peacock. I said wait until streaming, but it was concurrently streaming.
Yeah, it's already on Peacock. Yeah.
I will agree it is better than Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, but it is nowhere near as good as Cocaine Bear.
I don't think it's as good as Cocaine Bear. I like Cocaine Bear.
Anything is better than Cocaine Bear. My God.
Cocaine Bear was fun, man.
Is Bones Afraid better than Cocaine Bear?
Anyway.
Zach with a bad take again.
And then we all agree on this, being DC fans. How Skinnamarink got a good score and this got a harsher rating proves that Rotten Tomatoes should not be trusted. And then about the Banana Splits movie, I think I did show that.
I did read one review I was reading one review for this movie that kind of comedically said the banana splits did it better.
And then he also posted this. Also, critics dislike a Sonic movie for having too much Sonic. So, critics are dumb. We all know
Yeah.
that. So, but I just
Well, I
want
mean,
to
Sonic
I
is
don't know
laughing
if
his way to the bank. So, I mean,
I don't know
Jesus,
what the critics
Sonic's
are
laughing away to the bank on that. Because they make good money off those films. So,
I mean, this already made it like this. FNAF already made doubled its budget already. So even though
Yeah.
the movie is like sucking right now, there's gonna be sequels. So,
Yeah.
and I'm
apparently
curious.
somebody likes it. I'm glad
Scott
somebody-
Cawthon said if the movie does well, there's gonna be sequels.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's gonna be done after this specific movie because Zach, I remember you mentioning that, or after all the movies with the deal are done, because Matthew Lillard signed a 3-picture deal for the FNAF series. So obviously he's going to be.
And you
coming
know
back
what?
because-
I actually think there was a reason Matthew Lillard was in this as much as he was, because because
people love Matthew Lillard.
structurally you want to have him at the beginning, but then have the reveal towards the end, revealing him as the villain. I mean, hardcore fans are already going to know that it's William Afton, but obviously he's going to have a much bigger role to play in the sequels. Coming back for
Yeah, I think that could
Hey,
be.
all right, Jack gives his
But,
thoughts on the movie real quick.
Oh yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Jack.
It was good.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, honestly,
Short and sweet.
honestly, despite like it getting like negative reviews, it was gonna make a lot of money no matter what, because this franchise has a diehard fan base.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
the-
most recent game came out like 4 months ago. So,
Yeah.
it's still
Yeah.
going strong, whether people like it or not.
And
It's,
And I believe
I
there's
don't
another
know.
game coming out later this year, I think.
And then a
too.
novelization of the movie is coming out at the end of December.
I don't know if you guys would. I don't know if any of you agreed with my theory on this. I brought this up before. I was thinking this might be a similar scenario to the Mario movie, where critics were mixed on it, but the fans loved it. Do you think that's going to be the case for this one?
The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is at 90%. So
it's entirely possible. Yeah. I view it as this. This is my theory, and it helps that Matthew Lillard is in it. It kind of reminds me, again, we won't know until sequels come out. But I view it like this. Now, rewind back a bit to the early 2000s. Remember when the Scooby-Doo live action movie came out and everyone was like, this movie sucks, because the way they did it was like a weird satirization and experimental, and the fact that like the actual supernatural existed, even though it was already done with Zombie Island, but they did that in live action form, and it was just like a major put off because it was so different from the actual show and the source material and that kind of thing. We all remember that, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I've seen bits and pieces. But you know how Scooby-Doo 2 was way more like the actual source material, and how it was pretty much a live action version of a run-of-the-mill Scooby-Doo adventure? My theory is they're going to see the pushback with being like, hey, there's barely any animatronic action, and we got too much backstory with this guy we may or may not have liked. I have a feeling it'll go the way of the Scooby-Doo movie, where the first one is kind of weird and experimental, yet ironically the sequel is more like the source material. I have a feeling that the second and third, if that is going to happen, is going to be more like the source material, how it's not going to have as much backstory. That's my theory, at least.
if they
But hey,
do
that's
that,
just a theory, a game theory. Thanks for watching. So
Rick, dude.
That's just a theory. A FNAF movie theory.
But if
Actually, it was. Does anyone want to read Rob's review? It's on Letterboxd.
oh yes, I did. I was
Yeah.
going to do that. Sorry,
Well,
thank you
if
for
they
reminding me.
are
I
gonna-
had it hooked up and everything. So
if they
okay,
do that, by the way, I hope they do it reasonably and don't just throw all the character stuff out the window.
right. But anyway, so gonna read Right Dude's review. Okay, so this is Rob Right Dude's review. Even though I have played a handful of the games, meaning 1, 2, and Sister Location, I wouldn't call myself an expert on the lore or the franchise as a whole. In fact, my girlfriend's son is more of an expert than I am since he has played all of the games, watching YouTube videos on the lore, and even read the books written by Scott Cawthon, creator of the games, that explains more of the lore. I promised him I would take him to see it since it was one of his most anticipated films of 2023 if his grades improve, which they did. We got out of the film and he certainly liked it, but unfortunately I can't say the same. Let me start with the positives. The acting is really good all around. Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard gave standout performances. Same could be said for Piper Rubio, Elizabeth Lale, and Mary Stuart Masterson. The cinematography is well shot, the production design looks cool, and the score gives a creepy vibe of the games. The animatronics also look impressive and feel like the ones from the games. Also, when it gets the FNAF stuff, it's a fun time. Unfortunately, my positives need to stop here. The biggest negative I have is that as I feel like Josh Hutcherson's character Mike had way too much backstory to him. I get that the first game he had no character and was just a guy surviving a week's worth of pay for a security job, but I think the pendulum had swung too far in the opposite direction. Yes, you do need to give them more character, especially if the source material didn't give him much character at all. But if you focused 80% of the running time on the main character and adapting the remaining 20% on the source material, you lose focus on what you're adapting. Why did we need to know about Mike losing his brother? Why did we need the child protective services worker who wants to take his sister away? Why did we need Mike, his sister, the cop, and all the animatronics using dining tables and tablecloths to build the fort? Yes, that really happened. It's moments like that takes you away from the source material you are adapting. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's, not Five Nights with Josh Hutcherson. Although I would not mind a movie like that. Like I said, the FNAF stuff is a lot of fun, but since 30 to 40 minutes is focused on that, we are stuck with Mike's subplots that go nowhere and just slow down the pace. Because of this, I was getting bored at points and was just hoping that we would go back to the FNAF stuff. Also, I felt the reveal on who the mastermind of the whole operation was too obvious. Even knowing little of the lore, it was too easy to figure out the man behind everything. Overall, I don't hate this movie. It's not a bad movie, but I would be lying if I said it was a good movie overall. Maybe if you are a FNAF fan and love the lore, you might like it. My girlfriend's son really liked it. However, if you are not a fan, you won't be missing much if you decide to skip it. Again, not a bad movie, but if I had to pick a video game adaptation film in 2023 to recommend, I say stick to the Super Mario Brothers movie or any video game adaptation when it comes to right, dude. Sanic, because of course. And with that, he gives it a 5 out of 10. Well, at least from his rating. I don't know if he gave it like a 5.5 or
He
a
did.
4.5. So
He gave it a 5 out of 10.
Okay, so just 5 out of 10.
5 out of
There
10.
you go.
Yeah.
I don't like. All right,
but
look.
yeah.
Now here's the thing. I saw the reveal coming too, but only for one reason. Someone spoiled it for me.
But
with
even
who
then,
Matthew
dude,
Lillard
come
is.
on. It was really fucking
No, because the thing,
obvious.
all I'm saying is that I knew that Matthew Lillard was cast in this movie, but I just didn't know who because all I knew was Matthew Lillard's in this. So I wouldn't have seen this coming. I don't think it would. Not there would have been like a holy shit, like good Shyamalan twist, but I just wouldn't have seen it coming. I didn't want that spoiled, like because who likes spoilers, honestly.
I don't care about spoilers.
It depends on the movie.
Yeah.
Because but yeah, that's
yeah.
the only reason I knew what to expect. Because I then literally knew what to expect because someone told me who Matthew Lillard is in this.
I don't know. It just like it felt obvious to me, and it was like, all right. And the thing is, in terms of the FNAF games, I was looking up because I wanted to, brush up on the lore before I did the review, and apparently they did retcon that Mike Schmidt in the first game, despite having a pretty much nothing character outside of a name that was written on the paycheck. Apparently, he's the estranged son of William Afton.
Yes.
And now I feel like what they did here, and Austin, since you seem like you know the most out of all of us, feel free to correct me. But I feel like they just took that aspect of Mike Schmidt's character and then made a whole new character with Vanessa and her being the child of Afton. Because I don't think is Vanessa a character in the games?
Yeah.
So she is, but if I'm not mistaken, she does not come into the games until like Security Breach, which came out like 2 years ago, I think.
Okay. Yeah, my sister-in-law actually explained that to me because he did have a daughter, and she was killed, because apparently she likes the ice cream girl,
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but that was what caused William Afton to like fully snap, despite him killing a bunch of kids before that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a complicated man, William Afton.
Yeah, because William
Very
Afton's
complicated
supposed
man.
to have 3 kids: Michael, the crying child from FNAF 4, and then Elizabeth, aka Baby from Sister Location. And Vanessa was just somebody that was just William Afton is a very convoluted character in the games, because literally later on he has like the power to like corrupt people because he becomes like Glitch Trap or something. It's really weird, and like Vanessa gets manipulated and corrupted by William Afton. It's bizarre. It just felt really weird, like taking stuff from.
Yeah. It's just, as I said in the private chat, convoluted FNAF lore in a nutshell. That's essentially, because like Scott Cawthon, all he did was like he made a game way back when, and it was hated. I forget what it was called. It was like Chipper Lumber Company or something like that. And everyone was like, "Wow, these animatronics are super creepy." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna make a game where it's intentionally scary." And then it fucking blew up. So then he was pretty much inventing lore as the games and books and everything else was coming out. So,
Screw you. I'll make my own animatronics horror game with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, and it's essentially Disney being in charge of Star Wars, just throwing shit at the screen and hoping it would stick. Essentially, that's what it was. Because originally, again, this is according to Matt Pat's theories, that the original game was it like an allegory for like something that actually happened. It was like based on a true story, and the character of Mike Schmidt was like a metaphor or like an allegorical thing for a guy that actually went into like a Chuck E. Cheese and killed a bunch of people. Like it was like I think like a burglary that went wrong or something like that. So it was like allegedly based on that, but again, Scott Cawthon almost never confirms anything. So who knows if that's actually true or not, but that was just Matt Pat's theory back when he made his first video on the series. So that's all it was. And then we just got tons and tons of lore, and it's like constantly contradictory and convoluted based on half truths, half lies, and rumors. And it's a whole mess of shit, essentially. So it's just overly complicated.
But like I said, though, I actually didn't mind the Mike's whole story arc in this, because
I didn't mind it. It was just a lot of it was dumb. Like
it was.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem isn't there's too much plot. It's like I've never heard anyone complain about there being too much plot. We've obviously on the show we've complained about movies having no plot. But the problem is too much plot is not the problem. There's too much subplots, and the subplots they go with are very convoluted and are not interesting.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
It's a dumb plot. That's the problem.
It's just like I don't mind having Mike like taking care of his sister. That's if you want a little bit of drama in your horror movie, that's fine. Just have him struggling to take care of his sister. That's it. You don't need his aunt coming in. You don't need like fucking like this whole subplot with like his babysitter's brother like being roped into it, and it's just like
that's the best scene in the movie, though. Come on.
Yeah, because it was like actually being a horror movie for a second, like crazy. All you needed was like if you needed the babysitter to not be there, maybe she's just like, I'm busy, and then have the people messing up the place. If you want like a horror scene of people getting killed, then just have that be separate. You didn't need to like have like this whole fucking rigmarole in regards to his aunt hired these people to fucking fuck up his job so that he has to give the custody to her. Like
she
did
die, so that was a good.
And she died, and I said this in the private chat. She fucking dies in his house.
Yeah,
You would think that would be some sort of fucking lawsuit,
yeah.
Like what the
and
what
it's
the
swept
fuck?
under the rug.
And if you
Did they
think
bury
about
did they
it,
bury the body underneath the house?
we don't
And
know.
then it's
John
like,
Wayne Gacy?
like Telltale Heart style.
I mean, if you think
Even the
about
kid
it,
didn't say. I mean, did the kid even know? Because I mean, they just come get the kids. Like, okay, let's go to the. It's like, what the
Let's
hell?
go to the Freddy's.
Yeah,
Let's
I mean,
go to the
your
Well,
aunt just.
I don't know about the legal.
Let's all go to the Freddy's.
Well, I don't know if William
Get
Afton
ourselves
is
some
like
pizza.
widely known about in the lore, as far as like if people in the lore know about him. But just say it was William Afton that killed her.
but even that's kind of convoluted because if you really think about it, like this guy at the beginning of the movie, they establish has like problems, like he has like anger problems, and he's going through therapy. Like especially when they find out like the aunt is missing, you don't think that they won't question this guy, and like actually like there's no like real resolution to any of this, and it just doesn't make any sense.
It's just like, hey, forget
really
about it
does.
because the movie. It's like, hey, forget about it because the movie's over now. So fuck off.
Oh yeah.
Well,
and here's a
if I-
question. Speaking of that scene, what was the point of Golden Freddy?
Because from the games, I don't know.
Golden
What was even Golden Freddy's point of the games?
Freddy's another weird character because he's almost like to William Afton, he's basically the one that's kind of like he's the one that's almost he won't let him die pretty much. And like he's basically the guy he's like the gatekeeper to hell pretty much. Like he won't
Even
let him
if I would
die.
definitely deserve
And
it.
he's basically gonna let him suffer for all because Golden Freddy in the lore, he's the one that William Afton should never have killed because he fucks him up so bad that he's literally like in the games, he doesn't even move. He doesn't talk. Like he's legitimately like he's put in a position because the old like Spring Freddy suit is like it's like rotted away almost. Like it's just destroyed, dismantled, doesn't work. And like Golden Freddy in this game is just very vague. And towards the end, you kind of see him be almost like the gatekeeper and keeping Afton from dying at the end. But he doesn't really serve. He's kind of like the ringleader almost, but it's very vague.
And as far as you're saying like with the animatronics being anti-heroes, it makes sense. They established that the spirits of these kids are being controlled and manipulated by William Afton. So in a way, it's not like actually evil spirits. So when they turn on him at the end, I was like, yeah, this checks out.
I think honestly, a lot of the problem with the subplot is that, like I said, not subplot is not just the subplots. It's that they fail to make you care for this character at all. I mean, you're supposed to care for this guy. Honestly, he comes across as really pathetic. I mean, it's like, God, I mean, it's kind of depressed. It's like I said it to Jack at one point. God, this film was depressing. Jesus, this should be a fun film, man. It shouldn't be this depressing.
It actually feels like it's source material though. Like when they're going into the pizzeria and stuff, it's like it feels like the games.
I mean, the parts that it deal with that though, I mean, in the pizzeria with the animatronics, those parts are good. But I mean, then again, he'll go in the pizzeria and all of a sudden we got a flashback to fucking Nebraska and shit. Like, who the fuck nobody wants to see fucking Nebraska. People who live in Nebraska don't want to see fucking Nebraska. What the fuck? Why are you taking us to fucking Nebraska? God damn it. We want to see Five Nights at Freddy's, motherfucker. Jesus. Nobody wants to see fucking Nebraska. Jesus Christ.
Hey, Mark, do you like Nebraska? I can't tell.
No, fuck Nebraska. Jesus Christ.
And yeah.
The other Kansas. Yeah, exactly. What movie and cartoon fans said. I cared about the stuff from the game was fun. If they had cut out all the human drama and shit, or just, like I said, just streamline that shit, go straight with the game. Fuck it.
No,
make it so that it's just the guy that has to take care of his sister.
Exactly.
Boom, there you go.
Exactly.
Like, okay, he's kind of relatable. He's kind of like he needs to do this because he needs to take care of her, and that's it. He
Exactly.
just needs a
That's all you
job,
need.
and maybe
Mhm.
he has anger issues, because who the fuck doesn't have anger issues nowadays? Because like,
Exactly
I mean,
true.
to be fair, like look at the situation. Like he sees an unruly douchebag of a parent being a dick to his kid. Who wouldn't suspect that that's a kidnapper? Or like, I would honestly, the guy was being an asshole. I would probably tackle him and punch him in the fucking face. Fuck him. That happened. I was literally at getting lunch, and this guy was being an asshole to his kid for like no fucking reason. Hell, I wanted to fucking beat the shit out of him. So it's just like it needs to be simple. It doesn't need all this shit. And then when I was watching it, like when they're building a fort, I'm like, what is this? Is this it? Where they're building the dam? It's like, what the fuck?
They're doing
clearly
the blood. They're cleaning up the blood.
It clearly seemed to me like they were trying to build some kind of fucking romance between he and her. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
It didn't work at
maybe
all.
like a point of
It
like
really did
levity,
not.
but like they're playing like a pop song, and it's like, what the fuck is this?
This is the Freddy Fazbear
so
Friendship Hour.
Exactly.
I was like kind of like maybe sort of into it. I would have given it like a 6.5, but that like dragged it down to like a 5.5. But luckily the climax was fun, and so I zhuzhed it up a little bit more. But even then, like it was just like, what the fuck is this?
Let's talk about the PG-13 for a second, because I mentioned earlier, like, if I didn't know this was PG-13, they could have easily fooled me, and I would have thought this was an R. There's some pretty graphic.
You could tell it was PG-13, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Because I don't mind PG-13 horror movies as long as it's scary. Like sometimes restraint is good. I mean, look at Alfred Hitchcock. The man made it work. Like
exactly.
And there's some good PG-13 horror movies out there. Look at Sinister. Look at The Babadook.
Mm-hmm.
It came out this year. No one will save you.
As good as the no one will save you. Yes, No One Will Save You was fantastic.
And
I mean, look, the old Universal monster film. Shit, man. Fuck off.
Poltergeist is PG. So was Jaws.
Yeah, exactly. Poltergeist.
Well, that was 70s PG.
Yeah, that was when PG had balls.
Yeah, and A Quiet Place. That's another good one. I would say like at some points it is pretty tame, even though I'm not an expert on the lore. I do know the lore is pretty dark and pretty fucked up. Like
also Sinister had an R rating, not PG-13.
I thought it was PG-13.
Nope, it's rated R.
No, it's more.
Oh.
Yeah.
But even then, its point still stands. Like I remember, like whenever we talk about like ballsy PG-13 movies, Mark always brings up Mowgli. I haven't seen it, but I trust him. That is a movie. That is the movie that stretches PG-13 really fucking far, and it does it very well because it takes the advantage of the fact it is PG-13 and not like G or PG, even though PG should have a little bit more spice into it, but that's beside the point. It like just put a little bit more oomph into it. Like, and they did that like at some points when it was actually, being a horror movie, like not showing her getting ripped in half, not showing what happens to the security guard after he gets his, face fucked up. Like it leaves it to your imagination, which sometimes is scarier because what the human mind can create is far scarier than what can be shown. So I don't mind it being toned down as long as it's good, but it depending on the movie, it can work. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, Living Tombstone. There's does like remixes and stuff. He did a remix of a symphonic song and it was great. Would you agree with other people saying like this is like a good like gateway horror film for younger viewers?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
Like kind of like Nightmare Before Christmas, or maybe the older Universal movies where they're not incredibly scary, but they would probably scare. Actually, any Henry Selick movie, in all honesty. But yeah, it's a good gateway horror movie where it's not like totally like. It wouldn't scar kids, but it would be
Oh,
possibly
what's
something to
another
get
good
them
one?
interested.
9. That's the one that I would show kids.
Yeah, that could be good.
I mean, nine's okay.
Were you guys' screenings crowded, by the way? Because, like I said,
Mine had a decent crowd.
Mine was filled to the brim. I initially wasn't gonna buy a ticket in advance because I usually don't because nobody goes to theaters anyway. But I looked it up. But this is one of the few times I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let me look it up because Zach was saying it was packed. So I looked it up and there were only 2 spots available. Well, or I had to sit in front of the screen and I wasn't gonna do that because fuck that. So I ultimately decided to, pay for an advance ticket. Anyway, I thought the soundtrack was pretty good.
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah, it was
that
good.
I wish the little Freddy jingle was heard. I don't remember hearing it. Maybe I didn't hear it and it was in there, but from what I remember, the little Freddy jingle was not in it. I wish that was in it. Because I don't know, that was a recognizable part of the game.
Were your audiences going ape shit too? Because mine was like it was a Marvel or a Star Wars film. I'm not.
No, not. I mean, there was like maybe some talking, but outside of that, not really.
Like at the
Yeah,
end
same with me.
when William Afton says his thing, I always come back. It was like freaking Endgame in there when the heroes are all coming back through the portals. Like people were freaking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like there was a lot. I mean, there was definitely applause after the movie was over, and I heard a couple like, "Oh shit! That oh my god! It's yada yada yada." But my theater was filled with a bunch of kids, and they wouldn't shut the fuck up.
There was a lot of chatter in my theater too, but not like the annoying kind, like reactionary kind of chatter, that kind of thing. The big ones being with the cameos with Matt Pat and the other guy.
You see, I don't know who those people are.
I didn't either, but then the guy next to me who was going with us was filling me in on things I didn't know.
Do we have anything else we want to say about this movie?
Yeah.
How about
I was kind of hoping when William Afton was dying, I was hoping because the lights were like falling down, I was kind of hoping that one of the lights would fall down on his head and electrocute him like his death in Scream. I'm like, oh, that would have been really funny. That would have been really funny, but they didn't do that. So I was like,
yeah, because he's got to be spring locked into the suit and stuff. So
yeah, I know, but a man can dream, right?
Oh, I know that, but yeah, that
Actually,
Does Shaggy? Let me finish.
That was probably the most graphic thing, or at least thinking about how graphic it could be, at least with how he was being spring locked into it. It was just cutting into his rib cages, and you could start to see the bleeding. Like I thought that was very creative how they cut that.
Yeah.
Does Shaggy exist, and why is his name Matthew Lillard?
I don't know. Casey Kasem is still the best, man.
Casey Kasem is dead. Matthew Lillard is alive.
He only used 1% of his actual power.
Exactly.
We all know Shaggy is a god.
He could beat that.
But
that's the way you want to, you little shit. Fine.
I hate Shaggy memes. I fucking hate Shaggy memes. They are so annoying. They got so overrated within like the first like day. I got so fucking sick of it so quickly. So you're getting fan of them.
But one thing I do want to ask though is this: does this give us any interest in sequels?
Uh,
I would see a sequel to this. Like it's probably gonna hook me more into the FNAF lore. Like I may legit look up more stuff.
I kind of want to even though I don't like Matt Pat, I kind of want to rewatch his videos because they were generally good history theory videos. So I might go to a better user because Matt Pat sucks, but but yeah, I fucking hate Matt Pat, man. He's so fucking annoying.
The movie
He's so fucking annoying.
The movie itself wasn't too bad to where I wouldn't be interested in a sequel. I just hope that they take what didn't work in this movie and just sort of improves upon it.
Essentially, just making listening to the fans and being like, hey, we swear it'll be better now because it's actually more like the source material.
It was that. I mean, hell, at least from what I could see, knowing what I do know about the games, it looked faithful. I don't know, or maybe. But then again, I'm very outside of the loop on it, so who knows? But if they're gonna take anything from this, I hope they don't, just make it all animatronics but no character. I hope they don't take the wrong lessons from the fan feedback.
Yeah, I guess, but it certainly would have been interesting to see the Warner Brothers version of this. Yes, I know we all hate Warner Brothers, and that's totally valid.
We did get that.
However,
It was called the Banana Splits.
But no, it was it was originally gonna be it was originally gonna take place it was gonna come out like a year after the fucking first game, which would have certainly been interesting, and it would have been produced by Roy Lee, David Katzenberg, and Seth Grahame-Smith, and it would have been co-written and directed by Gil Kenan, which could have been really good because I do love me some Monster House. So that could have been really interesting. So maybe it would have been more streamlined, especially with the fact that at that point in 2015, I think, or 2015, 2016, there would have only been like 2 games out by that point. So it certainly would have been an interesting difference if it did become anything. So,
I did at the very end where Freddy's his child form closes the door on Will Appin as he's dying. I just said to myself very low, game over.
That would have been funny.
Yeah. Because that was actually something I didn't, because I knew William Afton was a big villain in the lore, but the way the movie was looking at it was doing, I was like, they're killing him already? What the fuck? But they're not. So, and I'm actually glad because I liked him a lot in this.
Maybe the second one will be a prequel because isn't the second game a prequel?
Yes. Austin, please fill us in.
What's up?
Five Nights at Freddy's 2, is that a prequel?
Oh, yes. So
Okay.
the timeline of the events, the timeline's even more convoluted because technically the 4th game is actually the first in the timeline.
I do remember that because that was right after the bite of 87, right?
No, it was actually before then because it took
Oh,
place
it was
in
okay. It was before. I thought it was right after.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bite of 87 takes place during FNAF 2, which I believe is like the second or third game in the timeline because I kind of mix both Sister Location and FNAF 2 kind of close together because they're both relatively in the same time frame, and then 1 and 3 come out are basically the next 2, which then would be followed by the 6th game, Pizzeria Simulator, which would then follow by the VR game and Security Breach. That's kind of like the timeline right now, but even then the timeline's like really weird.
Okay, cool.
I'd hope they wouldn't
Thanks for
do
your help
that.
anyway.
You're welcome.
Just make sequels if you're gonna make more movies. Just make sequels.
Yeah, just don't. I mean, they could, but just stick with sequels. Focus on this one guy. We know a lot about him already. Maybe he's a little bit in a better place. Maybe he's somehow suckered into it again. I don't know. Just hopefully they make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Don't make it so goddamn pathetic anymore. Jesus Christ, man.
We know Matthew Lillard's coming back, but we honestly don't know if anyone else.
This isn't over. Bears.
Seriously, right?
I do like this better.
This is not over. Bears. I fucking love that. Sorry.
Oh no, Country Bear hole's been crushed. Oh no. Oh no.
Or with a bear. My best.
I can't bear the excitement any longer.
With my best Charlton Heston impression.
I mean, hey, sometimes you just gotta kick it into gear. I love that song. Don't at me.
Okay. But is that kind of it? Because I don't really have
That's
anything
pretty
else to
much
say. I
it.
think I said everything.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't have much left.
That's pretty
I'd
much it.
say overall, our reactions are mixed positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, before we leave, this one final dad pun. Yeah. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right, but that's it. Our next review is what again?
It's either the Marvels or David Fincher's The Killer.
I think it's David Fincher's The Killer. Yeah.
I will not be seeing the Marvels, by the way, because
Yes, we know the Marvel sucks because Marvel sucks, so we're not seeing that. And then you fuckers got to sit through because of the algorithm. Zach, we're the smart ones. Fist bump.
yeah, Or-
Yeah.
You nerds can't even get it right.
now I did. Yeah,
Like here we go, Mark. Mark, let's try it.
Wait, here we go. Nope, other way.
You fucking got it wrong.
We got
You
it
can't
right.
even fucking do it. Anyway,
We got it
before
right.
this-
You guys never did.
But anyway, well, we're at a weird angle. Fuck you. Anyway, so
Nerd.
that's what we got in store. We'll see you later. In a couple weeks. Later.
Bye.